It's a different way of modeling than you're used to. Of course, I've used SubDs in the design phase of a project. This way of modeling is like modeling clay. It's going to be a lot of like intuitive design. Like the moment you're going to try SubDs, you're going to be, oh, this is even better.
Subdivision modeling, a revolutionary concept that has taken the architectural world by storm, traces its origins to the convergence of computer graphics and design. Developed initially for the film and animation industry, subdivision modeling techniques quickly caught the attention of visionary architects, yearning to push the boundaries of creativity. Now, as advanced CAD software has become more affordable than ever, SubD modeling has become a tool for all architects to empower innovative workflows. In this episode of Architecture Beyond, expert parametric architect and ThinkParametric co-founder Arie-Willem De Jongh discusses the current potential of SubD modeling for the architecture industry, its capabilities and challenges in helping architects reach new levels of creativity and productivity.
Hello and welcome to Architecture Beyond. I'm your host, Brandon Aaron Gibbs, founder of the course platform Iamthestudio and director of Studio Motion Forum. Architecture Beyond is an exciting new podcast about life after architecture and stories of those taking their design and creativity gifts to impact the world beyond the studio. This is our first series of episodes, so I hope you enjoy our guests and stories. Be sure to listen to the end for your opportunity of connecting with Architecture Beyond. Hello everyone, this is Brandon Gibbs with Architecture Beyond, and today we're talking with Arie-Willem De Jongh. I think I pronounced that correctly. Of
De Jongh.
De Jongh of ThinkParametric. Thank you for joining us on Architecture Beyond podcast. So today we're talking about SubD modeling. SubD modeling is a newer form of modeling that it's been around in like different types of versions, but it has just come around to like a lot more software platforms. So we're getting an in-depth understanding of it and how it can value architects and our work. So I just guess we'll start off by saying what really is SubD modeling, Arie, and I guess you can introduce your sort of background a little bit with it, as well as why is it special?
Thanks so much for having me, Brandon, on the podcast. So my name is Arie-Willem De Jongh. I worked, my background, I'm an architect. I've worked for an architectural firm for around 4 years after graduating, where I met my partner. And after, when we worked there, we started ThinkParametric. And that's where we focus on teaching architects and designers technological skills. And looking at SubDs, how it differs from regular modeling, I would say there's like your regular NURBS modeling, which is direct modeling, and that's probably something you're familiar with. It's basically just modeling surfaces. And then there's mesh modeling, and that's the other form that which is the two main ones, basically NURBS modeling and mesh modeling. And mesh modeling is mainly used in the CGI industries. So it's basically all the character designs you see if you watch a Pixar movie and you see all the characters, those are all done in mesh modeling. Okay. And this SubD modeling is basically a combination of the two. It takes the best of both worlds, where you have your NURBS and your mesh. And basically, if those two got a baby, you have SubD modeling, and that's I would say that's the main. Is explaining it in a simple way, that would be the main way how SubD modeling works. Yeah.
From your perspective, how has the use sort of evolved? Like now, it's definitely more popular. It's like the top of the industry. How has it really gotten here, and what's to expect of it from now?
Like I mentioned, I come from an architectural background, so we didn't really have it in architecture because buildings are most of the time they're just straight on, right? They're orthogonal, they're straight facades, straight floors, straight walls. So it's not SubD doesn't really come in handy that much because SubD excels in modeling organic shapes, right? Organic forms, curvilinear shapes. That's where it really excels. So in architecture, it wasn't being used that much. It mainly comes from the other industries like automotive design, industrial design, object design, right? Where, if you have an object, let's say a cup or a laptop or, your Apple AirPods, those have complex shapes most of the time. So in those cases, different forms of design, of modeling needed to be developed. And that's how SubD modeling really came and being perfected in that way. So, but you see recently, like the last, say, I don't know, 10 years ago, like it started to accelerate a little bit, where mainly firms like Sahadid Architects start to incorporate using SubD modeling techniques in their design process, and mainly for like their overall design, and mainly the facade. Like facade design was mainly done, especially in the form finding phases, like design phases, preliminary design. SubD was mainly used to get to these shapes, I would say. Yeah.
So you said it was sort of the baby of mesh and nerves together. Like this is how people were maybe modeling characters, but at the same time, it's not new to use curvilinear forms or more those type of forms. How does that play into SubD?
The thing is, like, if you look at mesh, because mesh was mainly used for modeling more like organic shapes, like natural forms, let's say face design, character design. But the problem is that those forms always stay inside of the computer. They never leave the screen because it's not needed, right? The end product is a movie or an animation or an image, right? So, but if you look at like industrial design or architecture, in some point it has to leave the screen and it has to be built, and that's where the limitations of mesh modeling come to light. Like, I think it's more like, if you look at NURBS, how a NURBS surface is described, or a NURBS object, it's mathematical. It's not like mesh is more um, like just vertices and faces. But a NURBS object is really described mathematically, which means you can send it to a CNC cutter. You can send it to like manufacturers, and they know how to perfectly bend, let's say, the surface in that way. So that's how it really changed the way it was used, because NURBS has some it has capabilities to deal with double curvature and things like that. But yeah, it becomes a bit technical, sorry for that, but the NURBS surface is always going to be a rectangle. It's a square, right? It's always going to be the topology a square. Like, you can stretch it like a rubber sheet, so you can stretch it the way you want. But the moment the topology becomes a bit more complex, so imagine like a donut which has a hole inside, or if you want to model, let's say, a t-shirt which has 3 holes, like your arms and your neck and stuff like that. Like, you can't do it with one NURBS patch. You have to use multiple to cover, let's say, the shape properly. And then the issue becomes, okay, I have one patch and another patch. Sorry, my camera. One patch like here, one patch here, and they connect. But then how do I get the continuity of the surface between those patches also nice and smooth, right? Nice and continuous. And then, of course, that's also possible, but it becomes a real hassle the moment the topology becomes way more complex, and that's why SubD is so much more easy to manipulate, and you don't have to worry about all these things I just mentioned. So
Yeah, I've experimented into SubD now that it's like a normal feature. What are some projects, I guess even big and small, that use SubD and it's really helping just the workflow?
project I personally worked on and I've used SubDs was it was a supermarket I think around 8 years ago. Was a Chedraui supermarket. Chedraui is a big supermarket chain in Mexico, and they wanted a new flagship store in Santa Fe, which is the new city center of Mexico. It's like a business center, so they wanted to. It's also close to a really big commercial center, so they wanted to be like this flagship store which would attract a lot of attention. So the facade needed to be pretty. Like, they wanted to be pretty spectacular, what I think was their term. So we started doing that, and it was even before Rhino had SubD. I used Maya for that, Maya SubD capabilities, and that's how we used to design the whole facade. But back then there were almost no possibilities to kind of get it out of the computer and send it to manufacture. I remember that we were working with an American firm, construction firm, and they were a good friend of ours, because they did most of the construction that we producing as an architectural firm. And then I remember that the guys told me, like, "Oh no, Arie, you again? Please don't tell me you did that in Maya, right? we're not gonna build that, right? That's just going to be like, it's just going to be a competition. And I was like, no, that this is a real project, and the client is happy with it, and we're going to make it happen. And he was like, oh no, man, you're breaking my balls, because it's a real hassle to get something like that, especially designed in a software that's not used for manufacturing things per se, to get it out. So that was kind of my first experience with using SubDs. But in the end, it turned out pretty nice. Of course, I've used SubDs in the design phase of a project, but it's mainly just form finding. So the moment you have your forms, you usually switch to using another type of geometry to kind of get it to the next phases, to get it to build and things like that.
I definitely know the use of SubD with the Maya software program. That's now Autodesk has its own interpretation of SubD now that they've just sort of bought these different software packages.
These splines.
Well, Rhino has gone a different direction, but my sort of background sort of with the Architectural Association Design Research Lab and seeing like a lot in like Zahadi's office, we of course maybe it's just more common, you'd think, in maybe in Europe, or maybe it's when you're right next door to Rihana Karif and you know, like Erupt, like they're using that. But the idea is, how can it be widespread? I think that's what the SubD is providing, versus like, you know, Maya was being used by Hazza Hadid, it was being used maybe by Grimshaw back in 2000s, but now I think Rhino is a little more down to earth, and there's even SketchUp SubD now. I guess what are some of the challenges that are really being faced with SubD modeling, and how do you overcome them? And in terms of like, you just launched a course and you went into that, like, how do you sort of help architects bridge that gap?
Like I mentioned, like I think for most architects, SubD will it will maybe not be that useful unless you really want to experiment and explore organic shapes, because then it really can become helpful for you. And I think the most hardest thing or challenge for you to achieve is to control, to really be in charge of the geometry, like like to achieve a smooth and uniform like shape. That's the hardest challenge, because like I mentioned, it's a different way of modeling than you're used to. Like what you're usually used to is just drawing some curves and extruding those curves, and those curves are going to be the driver of your poly surfaces or whatever you're going to be modeling, and it's going to be like very precise. But modeling with SubDs, it's different. Like you need to see it more as that you're modeling clay. So instead of like precisely indicating, hey, I want this corner to be this and this radius here and this, like really detailed and really precise, like SubD, it's more like intuitive, where you kind of push and pull and like you're modeling, and like you're modeling a clay face, let's say. So that's a way of where it can become a challenge for you to kind of have the model really precise, like exactly how you want it, but also keeping the shape uniform and smooth. So that's one thing that I'd say, like that's a big challenge. And like what you mentioned, Brandon, right now, luckily, there's a lot more tools for you directly in SketchUp, directly in Rhino, to start with SubDs instead of having to rely on software that's not necessarily meant for designing these shapes for architects. So that's a big plus. So you can directly design your favorite software and also prepare it for being rationalized. So in the end, you can send it to manufacturer. So those are like I think big jumps that's happening right now.
Those are some good points, I think, because it's like that's going to be the first obstacle, because the idea is when it's sometimes it seems like those types of forms are byproducts of a design form finding process. However, if you really like that form find, it's a big gap on the computer versus maybe even if you modeled it in person, you could start to figure it out. But that's where you're going with like this, I think, because the idea is like it's no longer just an afterthought of getting that into the built or built fabrication system.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's when you're modeling in SubD, I'm assuming you already have in mind, like, okay, at some point I have to start building this shape. I have to start manufacturing it. So you start thinking about what material it's going to be, what are the restrictions of that material, I need maybe a supporting structure that supports my shape. Like all these things, like I'm assuming that you're coming from that kind of point of view, right? Not from a CGI, purely CGI point of view. Because then again, like if you're just using it for character design for a short animation you want to produce and anything, you could do it with SubDs, but I think it would just be better to just stay with meshes, because meshes are way more light and they're also even more malleable than SubDs. There's a bit more, like, less restrictions, and it's more easier for texturing, which is way more important in the CGI industry. And SubDs, it's still a little bit. I think they're perfecting it a little bit right now. So yeah, like I said, I'm assuming you're coming from the background of like, hey, I want to get this stuff built. Yeah.
How has the development of software tools affected the way SubD is being used? Like, is it the idea is like people are putting their feet in. So how is that software pushing people in and making it more comfortable as a design resource?
First, there was not a lot of competition, unfortunately. The ones that were developing it were T-Splines, which was one of a company that actually cared about like manufacturing complex shapes, and they mainly focused on hull designs for boats and ships. And they got kind of popular also in the architectural industry. And then, unfortunately, Autodesk acquired them, so that they went kind of they got acquired into Autodesk products right now. But then Rhino, there was a lot of requests for Rhino to develop a similar feature,
Okay.
and they used an open source library to start with all of that. And yeah, recently with the release of Rhino, Rhino 6 had a little bit, but Rhino 7 had the alpha version released of SubD modeling, and it's pretty robust. Like it works pretty well. Another software, I'm not sure. Like it's like what I mentioned. Like, unfortunately, well, I mean, it's just in architecture, it's not used. Um, it's used, like I mentioned, mainly for just form finding solutions, right? Like I did a course, like you mentioned, Brandon. I recently finished using a little bit of SubD, but it was mainly to find the shape of a roof structure that I later on used to populate with structural beam elements. But it like the actual shape that I got with SubD was not my final like the final shape that was going to be built. Like in that case, I think SubDs would be used way more in the automotive and industrial design, where you like the SubD you design in your computer program will directly be used for as the final product, let's say. Yeah.
Hey, if you're interested in learning more about expert methods and professional workflows in SubD modeling with Rhino 7, check out the ThinkParametric.com link in the description. ThinkParametric.com offers multiple beginner to expert level courses in mesh, NURBS, and SubD modeling and the top design software, so be sure to check them out.
You're listening to Architecture Beyond, an exciting new podcast about life after architecture and the stories of those taking their gifts to impact the world beyond the studio. In this episode of Architecture Beyond, expert parametric architect and ThinkParametric co-founder Arie-Willem De Jongh discusses the current potential of SubD modeling for the architecture industry. This podcast is produced by Iamthestudio, a premium resource for training architecture and design professionals in the top industry software. If you need help with learning design software and techniques to a professional level, please follow the link on our page.
How do you see SubD modeling evolving in the future as a resource for architects?
I think it will become even more integrated as it is right now, and definitely I think it will become more seamless to kind of use it for particular elements into your design, like what you mentioned, not for the whole thing, but just for particular things. And I think the way you're able to manipulate this shape and kind of get information out of it, send it to another program, interoperability, I think that will become way more smooth. Because what I read is that even in Revit right now, they're trying to implement some sort of way you can use SubD modeling really preliminary.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's already in Revit, which is not really a design tool per se. It's of course building information modeling, which you're already in the later stage of your design. But still, they're trying to, like with the acquisition of these splines, they're trying to kind of find a way to implement some kind of functionality that replicates SubD modeling. That's what I understood. Yeah.
How do you incorporate user feedback into your SubD modeling designs? And I believe that question basis is looking at when you're thinking about the client process. A lot of architects, they're bringing their clients into maybe their virtual reality or design process. What happens when architects are showing something that was developed in SubD and saying, hey, look, maybe this is an option, this is another option. SubD being easier to control, it becomes part of that design option process where we're saying, okay, maybe this happens, maybe this happens. How do you see that developing and making it easier for architects to communicate that feedback?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I mean, SubDs are great for conveying ideas that are more, complex and curvilinear, especially to get a quick shape out. It's great. Um, but I'm looking now also at the developments of large language models and AI, and especially Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, the way they use those programs right now to really quickly generate like mood boards and ideas for clients. I mean, I think SubD is going to be left in the wind. I'm not sure
Yeah, Patrick
what
Shoemaker,
spot.
he just recently said now Zadid is using AI for all their projects. So it's like
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
bypassing that whole computer designer in front of the computer and just like computer itself, boom, to the design team.
Exactly. So I think, especially in the early stages of design where SubDs were great, I think right now, because of these new AI tools, I think they're going to be pushed a little bit back to more like when you already have a more clear view of what your design is going to be, and you're already going to start modeling it. So schematic design, I think. Uh, but preliminary design, yeah, I don't see, like these tools. You put in a prompt like what kind of um, image you'd like, or what kind of building you'd like to portray, what kind of ambience you want to convey to the client, and then it will just give you like a lot of different variations, and that you can already present to the client, adjusted maybe a little bit in Photoshop, and then done. And then when the client says like, no, I like this direction a lot, you go with that one, but you already have like a base, and then from that base, I think you'll start start modeling actual geometry and seeing how the space would actually feel, and getting a more grasp of dimension and size and things like that. So in that sense, I think, yeah, SubD will go more towards later stage in design, but still in the early phases, but not as early as we had before.
So it's sounding like it's still very valuable. It just someone just shouldn't just stay with that as their only thing they're learning. They need to keep aware of those trends because those trends are going to definitely dictate how valuable that is. How has the use of SubD modeling affected sustainability in design?
I think mainly for again, I think in the world of architecture, not much, because it's pretty niche, but definitely for industrial design, automotive design, SubD it's such a big improvement, because before you'd had to model everything by hand to do wind tunnel studies, aerodynamic studies, things like that. But right now with SubDs, you can really, it's one-on-one, like the shape you have in your computer and the shape you're actually going to get out by sending it to manufacturer, it's 100% the same. So in that way, the way SubD describe the surface in a mathematical way, instead of like just with faces and vertices and things like that, that was a big improvement on sustainability, because you didn't have to make a lot of test models to see and then smooth them out manually and stuff. So you save a lot of hours and time and material just by using that new type of geometry, and also being able to do those studies directly in the computer itself, instead of making a wind tunnel model and things like that. I think that definitely improved the whole workflow sustainability wise. And I think, yeah, by by using SubDs, looking at, let's say, I know AirPods, I think the way they use the molds, the way they design the molds, by using SubDs, I think they can be even more precise. So they would need less moving parts, maybe. All these things. I think in the end it ripples through the whole process, but I think they'll saving a lot of time and material by using this type of geometry. Yeah.
So how do you think that SubD can affect the broader field of fabrication? If it's going to be coming and being the same from the beginning to the end, essentially, if someone could develop, in their process, it sounds like it could be very impactful. Because I remember there was a project we actually used like CNC for cutting out a curved roof for one of the projects that I was working on at the time, and we essentially had to model everything out, all of the beams for that roof element, and that went straight to the CNC element. So it's like now we're 3D printing directly from the computer. I guess, how are you seeing that as affecting fabrication process? Because essentially it's now it's coming on the main designer to bring out that final elements. So in some sense, if you would see that as the architectural process, how we're working with contractors and fabricators, it sort of brings it more into our domain versus, okay, let's see if they can do it right. How do you see that playing out with the broader field of fabrication?
In terms of having different parties on the side, like with one party would, like, make like a mold for the beams, and then another party would put on the roof, like kind of like wiggle it in place and stuff. Like, you saying that with SubDs, those steps wouldn't be necessary anymore, because the shape you would get would directly fit 100% in place. Let's say you have a facade or a roof panel like that. Like, I agree. Like, in that sense, I think SubD will be like the whole workflow will be more efficient and quick and cost effective, I think. Yeah. But like I mentioned, in architecture, I think mainly it would be just like elements. Let's say I would mainly see it for facade elements or interior, like interior furniture or interior elements. Let's say that where you would use like organic design, and those, I think, definitely, like when these geometry types, they get developed in the software, like it gets more easy to design them in the first place, to be able to control them, because Rhino's implementing every day more commands and more features to be able to be even more precise with the shape itself, all the way till the actual fabrication, where I think the people fabricating it will also become more cost effective with how to install the panels and how to like fix them in place and things like that.
Yeah, and I think so with Grasshopper, I think one of the parallels is that now there's new, even the BIM software for Rhino is starting to increase in their versions. One thing about BIM is the ability to cost estimate. Like, that BIM model is being used by contractors, it's being used by fabricators. If I would be thinking about what's going into the fabrication side in terms of filling it out, like that, it's as if that Rhino model with that SubD, with the right plugins, like more could be brought out of that simple model. It sounds like, because like it's there. That's how, like, someone could be estimating material, they could be estimating a lot. Like, it could be a script, it could be other methods. So
Yeah.
that's sort of seeming like some of the
Definitely,
game
yeah.
elements in play. And so I'm sort of interested in the course where you're doing the Pompidou Metz. Is that the only course that's really using SubD? Because now it's like you're probably going to see that a lot more in ThinkParametric courses, as just like with Grasshopper, you see like hey, look, we have to use this plugin because this is like a winning plugin. Are you seeing SubD as something that's going to be an industry skill that, hey, these courses need to show it. These courses need to show it.
The thing is, when we started ThinkParametric, we initially focused on parametric design and computational design, and when those two like areas kind of grew a lot, it was mainly used doing complex shapes. Like that was that was basically how it was used in the beginning. So that's why the first courses we tried to make, we tried to show how computational design and parametric design were used on those more complex projects, and that's why we picked, for instance, like besides the Centre Pompidou, there was another one called the Haidar Aliyev Center, also by Sahadid Architects. Or sorry, the other one was from Sigur Rubin. And that is another project where the facade has a very organic curvilinear shape. And that was another project that we picked to kind of show like how you could use SubD to design an organic envelope in that way. First time I did the Haidar Aliyev, which is a long time ago, I actually used T-splines because it wasn't available yet in Rhino. And now I redid it using SubDs, so the workflow is a little bit more smooth, and it's a little bit more easy to use it because right now SubD is integrated directly into Rhino, so it's a little bit more easy to also connect it with standard geometry types and things like that.
What advice do you have for aspiring designers in SubD modeling?
The advice I would have them is to just be very patient, because it's a different way of modeling. Like, I don't know exactly where from which software you come from, but it's going to be probably like just poly modeling or NURBS modeling, and this way of modeling is like modeling clay. So it's going to be a lot of like intuitive designing, where you're going to look at your screen, rotate your model, push and pull a little bit, instead of being, oh, I want this corner exactly to be the radius 4, or that really precise way of modeling. It's not going to be like that. So in that way, you have to switch a little bit your perspective. But the other side of that coin is that you're going to be able to model really interesting, cool shapes with really little effort, basically. So that's very cool feature to have. Yeah.
What are some reasons for existing students to go ahead and jump on the SubD skill train if they haven't done that before? There's some people who are into SubD already taking it, but those who are new to it, why should they get started with that?
If they're interested in jumping into modeling more organic shapes, I would definitely advise them to take a look into SubDs, because it will really like increase the workflow. Because you could do it with NURBS, obviously, but I think like the moment you're gonna try SubDs, you're gonna be, oh, this is this is even better. And it also depends, like your style. No, if your style is more orthogonal and straightforward, SubD doesn't really make sense. But if you want to dabble a little bit in doing more organic design and things like that, I think it's definitely worth it to take a look into it.
For prospective students, people who are thinking about skills, why is SubD something they should jump into, and how does those courses on SubD really address the need in the industry?
Like most architectural firms, they don't even touch curvilinear shapes. So, I mean, of course, like if you want to do, that's the thing. If everyone would do organic shapes, like I'm all 100% SubDs. Like, you need to learn it. But that's the thing. Like, realistically, it's kind of a niche inside of architecture. Maybe I overemphasize that, but yeah, it's just how it is. Like, unfortunately.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I guess I would be targeting toward the use of SubD for people who are doing this, or firms who get that project. Because I've been working with a firm, and we've been working on a project about this theater that's using these curvilinear shapes, these organic shapes, and I immediately knew SubD was the tool. So I had to jump in on my SubD skills, even though it was already a feature. How does someone get started when a SubD is the solution for their problem? in modeling?
I would start by, like how you would regular start with a project. I would set up some line work, like some curves. Curves that are important for you, that you want the SubD to follow. So you know, and those curves also give you like a little bit of calm, because you know that those curves, they represent a certain offset that the SubD shouldn't cross. You know, your the measurements you put in place, that they work because they represent, that curve represents that. And then when you have your curve network basically set out, then you start putting your SubD on top and kind of pushing and pulling it until it kind of fits the curve network. And also thinking about your topology, that your topology makes sense. So yeah, that's how I would start. I would still start like with a regular geometry. Just start with a curve network, because it's very good to have as a backbone, guiding your SubD.
How does the use of SubD modeling affect the design timeline?
Obviously, designing something that's curvilinear, it will take you exponentially as much time, just because doing something that has a curve, it will ripple through the whole process, because it's just harder to not just to visualize, to imagine, to make, to produce, to fabricate, to put together, like every single step. I've seen it always, from every single, from the manufacturer to the guy putting it in place, to the person I have to convey the information from my screen to theirs. Whenever it's curved, it just takes more time. So that's something that's unfortunately not that great. The good thing is about SubDs is that it will actually reduce that whole gap, because SubDs are very well put together. The way they function, the way they are being described by the program itself. So I think those kinks in the whole, like, process of trying to construct something, um, they will be reduced by SubDs, versus what it was before. Um, so in that sense, I think SubDs can be very beneficial, especially with uh, industrial designers who design organic shapes. Using SubDs like in their workflow, like um, sending it directly to prototype or to manufacture even, it will definitely speed up the whole process. Yeah.
When are some times that SubD is ideal for the architecture process or design process, and when are some times where someone should try another method to avoid maybe going into SubD when it's going to be either inconvenient or maybe another tool will fill the need?
Yeah, if your project is mainly orthogonal, so it has sharp edges, 90-degree angles, something like that, so D might not be the best way to approach it, SubD modeling. But the moment your project has like curvilinear shapes, not only like in the floor plan or the facade, but the overall design is curvilinear, you might want to check out SubDs, yeah, to kind of pick spots like, hey, oh, here it could be useful. Or if you have an orthogonal project, but let's say you have an interior space which is the opposite. Let's say you have your building envelope is really square, really like straightforward, but the inside is really you wanted to try something else. So the interior and the exterior, they kind of contradict. So the interior is more curvilinear. You might want to check out like SubDs to kind of from designing the space itself to maybe the furniture you want to put in there. In that sense, SubDs can be something you might want to look into to get started.
That's a good point, because it's that tactile sense of the tool that will help someone get the most out of the design process. And I feel that's something that's a common theme with ThinkParametric tools. It's you're not going to use everything all the time. You're going to be using something that's going to value that particular project and that particular workflow. I guess what is the end product that students will have from learning about SubD with the Center Pompidou Metz or with the Haider Aliyev Center? What are those takeaways?
I like looking at those two courses. I think you'll be able to to better understand how to start designing an organic envelope. especially when the topology is a bit more complex. You know, like, oh, there's this geometry type called SubDs. You know, I can use this to kind of get to this result. And of course, the course they dive a little bit deeper into all of that. But I guess that was the goal of those two courses, is that to kind of to broaden your imagination and your creativity, in that sense, that you're not like, I think you shouldn't be limited by actual physical things. I think whatever you can imagine, you should be able to model it in a computer, let's say. So I think by showing you like what's possible with SubDs, like really crazy stuff you can do with it, really interesting, nice stuff. I think by showing that, I hope students will be able to realize that, and whenever they see a project in real life, or whenever they're designing a project and they have this really nice idea, that they're not limited, like, oh, but I don't know how to, tangibly create this in my computer. Right now, they do have a way to do that using SubDs.
I guess that's a good point, because definitely they are pushing forward to find that tool and that method, and as they're learning it, they're going to be equipped for that situation. Essentially, it's like you're putting the library in your head of those tools, and you'll be able to handle each one of those in a skillful design process. I suppose. I guess. Finally, where can people find those courses to learn about SubD on the ThinkParametric website? I guess how do they find those courses?
All those courses are available at our website, ThinkParametric.com. In the library, we have the HIDAR is one course, the Centre Pompidou, and I use SubDs in some other smaller courses as well. And ThinkParametric has way more courses besides SubD. It also has building information modeling courses, direct modeling courses, some parametric modeling, obviously, and visualization analysis, and some other topics as well. So I would, invite you to check it out. And the way the website works is with a membership. So you pay for the yearly membership, you pay a certain amount, and then you have access to the whole library, like you would with using Spotify or Netflix. So that's how it kind of works. So you don't have to worry about like that you have to pay for individual courses. Like you have access to the whole library, because we believe that every single course is interesting for an architect or a designer to learn.
That's really important. I think you're definitely understanding that it's never just one skill that an architect needs. You're giving that wealth of skills. And so things like BIM, or thinking about analysis, thinking about parametric design, they need to be seen as all working together. And that's what your course library is offering. So I think definitely even looking at SubD in that way has really helped me see it a lot more clearly in terms of skills that are needed, and also just capabilities for designers. Thanks a lot for joining us and talking about the power of SubD for architecture, Arie.
Thanks so much for having me, Brendan.
We'll put the links in the episode, and everyone just take a look at that, find out more about SubD, and see if that will help you in your design process, and find more about the ThinkParametric courses as well with those links. Thanks for joining us.
This episode covered the possibilities for architects with subdivision modeling techniques, as introduced by expert parametric architect and ThinkParametric co-founder Arie-Willem De Jongh. To find out more courses training you in SubD modeling, check the links with this episode available at thinkparametric.com. If you are interested in learning more about architecture technology and the latest industry methods, check out our sponsor, thinkparametric.com, and check out the ThinkParametric newsletter This Week in Architecture.
In the next episode, you'll hear how fashion and architecture come together in the wonderful story of architect and fashion entrepreneur J.F. Chambers, founder of New York City brand Measure Life. Be sure to check it out.
Architecture Beyond is an exciting new podcast about life after architecture and the stories of those taking their gifts to impact the world beyond the studio. This is our first series of episodes, and we're interested in your feedback. Are there some topics you would like to hear, or are you interested in being a guest? Go to Iamthestudio.com and click on Arch Beyond in the menu for more information.
This has been Brandon and the Architecture Beyond crew. Catch you in the next episode.